37. 26 knots down the Eagle. 106 to interval is a Rhino at 5. Good. 207 on glide path on course 1 mile. Good. 207 on glide path on course.
In April 2006, the 1st Battalion, the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, deployed to Iraq as part of the 20th Armoured Brigade. On arrival in the theatre, the battalion was based at various locations in the southeast of the country, with its C Company being garrisoned at Camp Abu Naji on the outskirts of Al-Amarah. It was here, shortly after arriving, that C Company found itself on the receiving end of rocket and mortar attacks, as Major Steve Vinnell recalls. The complete stillness of the night on the 15th of May was punctuated by a series of firework-like whistles, not one but multiple, and seemingly coming in from different directions. I remember shouting incoming as I ran the last few yards and dived for the ground next to my cabin. The first explosions erupted and I could tell they were close as I heard the shrapnel pinging off the cabins around me. I hugged the ground, my arms underneath my body, to try and make myself as small a target as possible. In total, throughout May, 4 British soldiers suffered light wounds as a result of these attacks, and as they increased in tempo and ferocity in early June, the British command in Iraq authorised a major search operation to be conducted in Al-Amarah, in the hopes of finding anyone responsible, as well as any equipment linked to the bombardments. Beginning in the early morning of the 11th of June 2006, C Company, supported by Challenger 2 tanks of the Queen's Royal Hussars and elements of the 1st Battalion, the Grenadier Guards, moved into the city on board Warrior armoured fighting vehicles to begin the search. Dismounting from the Warriors at around 0310, the British infantry came on the small arms fire as they moved off to the pre-arranged targets, with short but intense firefights between the British and the insurgents taking place across the city. Eventually, as the sun began to rise, the order was given for the British force to withdraw and return to camp. However, as they did so, one of the Warriors veered off a road and became stuck in a ditch near the centre of the city, prompting the crew to begin efforts aimed at recovering the vehicle, just as crowds of Iraqi civilians began to form around the site. Fortunately for the crew, more British troops soon arrived and set up a cordon around the Warrior, wherein from out of the tight alleyways and from the neighbouring buildings, an enemy force, estimated to have numbered 200 insurgents, appeared and launched a series of attacks against the British perimeter. Despite being outnumbered, the men of the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment held their ground and at times drove the enemy back, with one such action involving Sergeant Stephen Izzard, who led a group of British infantry in a 100-metre charge down a street to take out an enemy strongpoint. For this, Sergeant Izzard was awarded the Military Cross. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the cordon, a detachment from C Company's headquarters began to receive accurate sniper fire, with Colour Sergeant Ian Page, who was in the turret of the Warrior he was commanding, being hit in the face. Inside the rear passenger compartment of the vehicle at the time was 19-year-old medic Private Michelle Norris, who remembers, "I heard a big bang up front and the driver said the commander had been hit. I asked if he was okay, but nobody spoke." Unable to get to Colour Sergeant Page from her current position, Private Norris asked the driver to stop the Warrior while she dismounted and administered first aid to their commander. Opening the rear door, Private Norris leapt out from the AFV, climbed up the side of the vehicle and up to the turret, where she found Sergeant Page seriously wounded, having had his jaw shattered by the enemy bullet. Although in full view of the enemy, Private Norris began to treat Sergeant Page, as insurgent gunfire hit all around her, including one bullet which struck her rucksack, and another which hit the radio mounted on the side of the turret, narrowly missing one of her legs. Despite this, Private Michelle Norris remained in place and continued to provide life-saving support to her commander for 3 minutes, after which she, with the assistance of a couple of other British soldiers, moved the Colour Sergeant to the rear compartment of the AFV in preparation for a medical evacuation, which had been organised by Company Sergeant Major Barry French. During the long intense battle, I heard casualty over the radio, and as I got my notebook out, the soldiers' details started to come in over the radio. I had enough information to start the CAS evac procedure, so heli extraction was requested. As the Warrior approached the emergency rendezvous, I had a medic stand by to help administer first aid. By the time the back door of the Warrior had opened, the helicopter was landing on my smoke grenade marker. In the skies above Al-Amarah, a British Lynx helicopter, piloted by Captain William Chesarak, a US Marine temporarily serving with British forces as part of an exchange program, was rerouted to conduct the evacuation of Sergeant Page. Touching down at the casualty evacuation point, Captain Chesarak, along with his crew of Royal Navy Lieutenant David Williams and Royal Marine Lance Corporal Max Carter, helped transfer the wounded officer onto the Lynx, prior to airlifting him out to a nearby military hospital. Remarkably, despite the severity of his wounds, Colour Sergeant Ian Page would go on to make a full recovery, thanks in large part to the life-saving first aid Private Michelle Norris provided him, all the while under intense enemy fire.